welcome to Zach's Tech Turf. So what'd you guys think of that sick build montage? Hopefully you didn't cringe too hard at the end there, but let me know down below if you want to see more build montages like that. But anyway, today we're going to be checking out my new personal rig, which honestly cost me like $2,500, so hopefully my wife doesn't watch this video. So let's first talk about what parts are in this beast of a PC and why I chose them, and then we'll get into the benchmarks and final thoughts. The processor I went with is none other than the Intel i7-8700K, which is an unlocked 6-core 12-thread beast that I currently have overclocked to a cool 4.8 GHz. Now I have successfully overclocked this processor to 5 GHz, but I've personally never seen the point in getting that max overclock, especially with my own components. If I was doing like a used build where I want to get the best bang for your buck performance, then yeah, I would do it. But for my own PC, I think I want to knock the overclock down just a bit and keep it running cool. The motherboard that you're looking at is an ASRock Z370 Extreme 4. The only real reasons I went with this one is because it's pretty much all black and super stealth looking. It has two M.2 slots and a USB-C slot in the back so I could route a USB-C hub under my desk. The RAM I chose is a Corsair Vengeance RGB 16GB DDR4 3600 MHz kit. I was really tempted at building my first rig with 32 GB, but as we all know, the price of RAM is just too high right now, so I stuck with 16 GB. I also personally believe that these are the best looking RGB RAM sticks on the market. The graphics card that I decided to go with is a GTX 1080 Ti, and that card is somehow even more beastly than I thought it would be, but the thing about it is I really didn't even want that card. As you guys know, that center monitor there is a 1440p 144Hz FreeSync monitor, so I really wanted a Vega 64 to go with this build. Unfortunately, both Vega 56 and Vega 64 cards are pretty much impossible to find at this point unless you put a couple mortgage payments on them, so I snagged up this 1080 Ti for $770, literally the day before they all skyrocketed back up to like $1,300. I did overclock this graphics card about 60 to 70 megahertz. It's actually a really good overclock out of the box, and it's now well above 2000 megahertz. But like I said, that's good enough for me and I didn't really push it too hard. For power, I went with an EVGA 650 watt 80 plus gold certified power supply, which I actually recycled from my last build. 650 watts is almost pushing it honestly for an overclocked 8700K and 1080 Ti, but it is enough. Make sure you check out my top 10 tips for saving money when building a PC video, because my #1 tip is to not overspend on that power supply. I'm also running these Fantex red and black extensions, which I highly recommend for aesthetics. Moving on to storage, I got quite a few pieces in here, so I'll just rattle them off. My operating system and most used applications are loaded on this Samsung 960 EVO 250GB M.2 SSD. That custom ZTT SSD in the front is just a pretty budget ADATA 500GB SSD, and that holds all my current ZTT projects. And underneath the power shroud are two hard disk drives, a 3TB Western Digital Blue, which holds everything for ZTT, and a 2TB Western Digital Black, which holds all my games. For cooling, I went with an EVGA CLC 280mm all-in-one closed loop. I actually had the 240mm version on my parts list for like a month, but one random day the 280 price went all the way down to the 240 price, so I just went with that one. I really like the flexible tubing and of course the RGB EVGA logo on this. My CPU overclocked to 4.8 sits in a chilly low 30s. Now for some cooling, the company Arctic actually hooked it up and they sent me this 120mm and 140mm fans for my exhaust fans, and they even hooked me up with the Freezer 33 Esports CPU cooler, but I'll be featuring this in next week's video, but these fans look sick in this build. And finally, for a bit more RGB goodness, I purchased the NZXT Hue Plus LED kit, which includes this SSD sized hub which connects both into a Molex power connector as well as the 4 LED strips that go around the case. I can obviously make this color whatever I want, but I think the basic white glow really makes the red and black theme looks so much better. Stuffed inside the case is also an NZXT internal USB hub, which makes cable managing these accessories so much easier and well worth the 22 bucks I paid for it. Now with all the parts out of the way, I know you guys want to see some benchmarks, and like I said at the beginning of this video, I could have squeezed out a few more FPS by upping my overclock on both the CPU and the GPU, but I personally rather have my system running a bit cooler. Like actually cooler, not like you know. For a little bit of a warm-up, I started with Overwatch. In 1440p and epic settings with a 100% locked resolution scale, I was averaging 191 FPS. This system can obviously handle Overwatch in 4K, which I unfortunately can't test, but yeah, this was just a little bit of a flex before we move into the more demanding titles. Speaking of which, Assassin's Creed Origins was up next, and this one is certainly a tough one to run. In 1440p and high settings, I was averaging right at that 100 FPS mark, but as you can see, I did drop down pretty low. I could definitely play this game in 1440p on the highest settings around 80-ish FPS, but for this video, I wanted to clear at least 100 FPS on all these titles in 1440p because of my 144Hz monitor. Next up was PUBG, aka the CPU killer, and here in 1440p and high settings, I averaged an impressive 133 FPS, and it actually didn't spike around that much. I was pretty surprised about how well this ran, to be honest. And the last game I tested was Forza Motorsport 7, mostly just because it's a beautiful game and with a built-in benchmarking tool, and in 1440p and Ultra, aka the max settings, I averaged exactly 140 FPS, and this one also stayed very consistent throughout the benchmark. And finally, for you 3D Mark overachievers out there, I did load my 5.0 GHz overclock profile and ran Firestrike, and I can't believe I actually cleared the 25,000 point mark. I personally have never cared about this Firestrike score, but it was pretty cool to start at like 23,000 and work my way up as I increased the overclock for both my CPU and GPU. So yeah, as you can tell, this computer could definitely destroy 1080p gaming, and it's doing very well in my 1440p 144Hz monitor, but even if you wanted to push it to 4K, you could certainly do that, but I think the sweet spot right now in early 2018 is 1440p and 144Hz. Overall, I'm very happy so far with my new 2018 gaming/editing build. There are definitely a few other things that I could do with it. I could delid the processor and really tune in that overclock. I could get another M.2 SSD for some RAID action, and I've actually been thinking about reapplying that thermal paste on the CPU cooler because I have a feeling that that stock paste wasn't the best choice. Well, that wraps up my 2018 build video. Man, this video was a ton of fun to make. Also a lot of work though. Please be sure to let me know what you thought about that montage in the beginning of the video. I actually want to make more like that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please drop a like down below to help support my channel, and as always, thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more Zach's Tech Turf videos.